Zat Hashem. Today we're going to study a very special lesson in Likutei Moharan. A lesson which Rabbi Nachman speaks about the greatness of the tzaddik and why a person needs to attach himself to the tzaddik if he really wants to draw himself close to God, to attain holiness, etc., etc. We're going to see a very special lesson, but before we get into it, we obviously need some introduction because Rabbi Nachman speaks about this concept of the tzaddik in all his lessons, basically. It's actually the biggest motif in all of his books, especially his main book, Likutei Moharan. It's his magnum opus. And in this book, he speaks about the importance of attaching yourself to the tzaddik. He mentions this word tzaddik, tzaddik, tzaddik ha'emet, tzaddikim amitiyim, many times. In fact, you'll see almost every lesson he speaks about this idea. And the importance behind it, we're going to come to really understand, especially throughout history, especially in the Sfarim of the Torah. We're going to see how much the idea that tzaddik comes up and it's constantly recurring throughout the Torah. And Rabbi Nachman points to many certain examples, especially the student of Rabbi Nachman, Rabbi Natan Abresa, speaks about the idea of attaching yourself to the tzaddik tremendously. In fact, one time, one of the students of Rabbi Natan Abresa came and asked him, who's bigger? The simple person who's attached to the tzaddik, a person who doesn't have a great level, a person who doesn't have much wisdom in Torah, but he's attached himself to the tzaddik, and he follows his advice, and he truly throws away his wisdom to accept the advice and the guidance of the tzaddik, or someone who mamash is a big tzaddik but on his own, without attaching himself to the great tzaddik at the level of Moshe Rabbeinu we're talking about here. And we're going to discuss the differences between different tzaddikim. And Rabbi Natan responded to his student saying that it's clear that the simple person who's attached to the tzaddik, even if he's more wicked, is greater and will eventually be greater. Because, as he brought down, the proof is in the Torah. When all the Nesi'im, all the princes brought their donations, and when everyone brought their donations to the dedication of the Mishkan and the Tabernacle, each and every person had to bring their donation first to Moshe Rabbeinu, who was the tzaddik of the generation. And Rabbi Natan says if they didn't bring those donations to Moshe Rabbeinu, it would not have been accepted. Even the biggest donation, the most amount of money, the biggest amount of gold, would not have been accepted had it not been yet brought to Moshe first. So we see here that even the simplest of donations, the smallest donations, the cheapest ones, that were brought to Moshe first were accepted. And this is the most important idea we're going to see here, especially the final rectification at the end of times, before the Mashiach comes, that the main work of every single Jew we're going to see is to attach yourself to the tzaddik. And specifically we're referencing great tzaddikim in general, but there's one tzaddik that is superior, as we see with Moshe Rabbeinu, and that is the Neshama Moshe Rabbeinu, who constantly is reincarnated every single generation, as Rabbi Natan writes in Alim Nitrufa, in his books specifically the letters of healing. He writes to his son in the second letter that he tells him that Moshe Rabbeinu is the holy elder who constantly reincarnates himself in every single generation, not to fix himself, but to lead Am Yisrael, to lead the Jewish people out of the exile that they find themselves in. And Rabbi Nachman starts his book, Likutei Moharan, with an awesome novelty that he told his main student, Rabbi Natan, on his journey to Uman, from Breslov to Uman, 6 months before he passed away. He tells Rabbi Natan this awesome chidush, this awesome novelty about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He says that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai made a promise to all the Chachamim in Kevin Beyavne, when all the Chachamim gathered to discuss the final outcome of the Jewish people and all the future that would come whenever the Jewish people would be exiled after the destruction of the Second Temple. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai argued against all the sages at the time, and he was younger than all of them. And all the sages said that the Torah would be forgotten from Am Yisrael. From the Jewish people, we would forget the Torah once we went into exile. But Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai made a promise. And look at this haftacha that he makes, an amazing promise. A promise that takes lots of guts and lots of azut, holy boldness we're going to talk about. And this is an amazing thing that he says. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai yivtiach shelo tishtachach Torah miYisrael al yado. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai made a promise. He guaranteed that the Torah would never be forgotten from Am Yisrael through him. Here we're saying that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai makes a promise that it's in his merit that we will never forget the Torah. As brought down in Gemara Shabbat, Kuf Lamed Chet Amud Bet, page 138, side B, that when all the Chachamim entered Yavneh, they all said, in the future the Torah would be forgotten from Yisrael. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai said that it would not be forgotten. Chapter 31, it will not be forgotten from the mouth of his descendants. And Rabbi Nachman adds, he brings the Zohar in Parashat Naso, page 124b. Because now Rabbi Nachman brings the Zohar to prove that it's in the merit of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai that will never be forgotten, that the Torah will never be forgotten from Am Yisrael. It's not on anyone else's merit except in the merit of the Tzaddik. Because Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai writes in the Gemara Sukkah, Daf Mem He, over there in page 45, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai writes that he is the Tzaddik Yisod Olam, and that he has the koach to completely liftor kol ha'olam midin. He has the power to exempt the entire world from judgment. Look over there, you'll see many examples of great tzaddikim that have spoken highly about themselves. God forbid that we can't question why they say these things, but it's a guarantee and it's a promise to us that no matter where we go, no matter how orphaned the generation might seem, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said there's no orphan generation. En dor yatom, there's no such thing as an orphan generation. You always have tikva, we always have hope, and Hashem's rachamim, Hashem's chesed, is that He'll always send a tzaddik at this level of Moshe Rabbeinu, which the Zohar says, Moshe is Mashiach. And we know Moshe is a reference to Mashiach, because Mashiach is Shiloh. Mashiach is a reference to Shiloh. And Shiloh is Gematria Moshe. So we see here this amazing idea that Moshe is the Mashiach. Moshe's soul is the Mashiach, who will come back generation after generation and lead the Jewish people out of the troubles that they find themselves in. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was an aspect of Moshe, the Arizal, the Bat-Chen of Rabbi Nachman. And finally, the Mashiach, we're going to see this awesome chidush that Rabbi Nachman starts Likutei Moharan, his main book, with. So, Rabbi Nachman brings the Zohar in Parashat Naso, which says, with this work, known as the Book of the Zohar, meaning with the Book of the Zohar, we will be redeemed from the exile. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai makes this great claim that in the merit of the Zohar, we're going to be redeemed. Now come and see and understand the secret wonders of our holy Torah. Because now we're going to understand why Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai put all his foundation upon this verse in Dvarim, as we saw above. Why did Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai claim the Torah will never be forgotten from Am Yisrael? Because it's written inside the Torah, in the last book, Dvarim, chapter 31, because they will not be forgotten from the mouth of his descendants. So Rabbi Nachman asked, why did Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai use this verse? And why didn't the Chachamim agree with him if this verse was so obvious? Because they clearly knew this verse, but why didn't they believe that this verse is proving that we will never forget the Torah? So the Chachamim, we know, said that this is a reference to Parashat Ha'azinu, that Am Yisrael will never forget the Parashat Ha'azinu, the song. But Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai made a bigger encompassment. He said that it actually encompassing something much greater, that we will never forget the entire Torah. Rabbi Nachman saying the truth is, within this verse itself, you can see hinted this awesome secret. And the reason why Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai relied on this verse. Because we saw in the Zohar that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai writes that it's in the merit of his book that we will be redeemed from the exile. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is coming to tell us that it's in the merit of Yochai's descendant, meaning Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's father, who's Yochai. It's in the merit of Yochai's descendant, which is Rabbi Shimon we're talking about here, Yochai's son. That it's in his merit that we will never forget the Torah. Because if you take the last letters of this phrase, you take the word ki, you have the last letter, which is Yud. Lo, you have the last letter, which is Aleph. Tishachach, the Chet. Mipi, the last letter is Yud, and Zaro is Vav. Spell them around, mix these letters around. Hem otiot Yochai. You get the letters Yochai. Which is coming to tell us what? This is what the Pasuk is revealing and hinting to us. That's what it says in the verse, right? Because it will not be forgotten from the mouth of his descendant. Meaning, whose descendant? The The word in the verse is Mipi Zavo, from the mouth of his descendant. And Mipi Zavo shel Zeh Be'ato Shemuran V'Nisab B'Zeh Pasuk Shelu Tanan Yochai. Meaning that it's referring to this descendant of the person which the verse is referring to. Meaning what? What is the verse referencing? It's referencing this tzaddik, this Tana, this author of this Mishnaic sage, Yochai, the father of Rabbi Shimon. Because if you take the last letter of that phrase, you get the name Yochai. Meaning what? It will not be forgotten from the mouth of his descendant. Whose descendant? Yochai's descendant. Meaning through the descendant of Yochai, who's hinted in this verse, who's revealed, who's literally, as you can see inside the verse, Rabbi Nachman's teaching us. We can see in the last letters, Shehu Rashdi, meaning in the merit of Rabbi Shimon, who's the son of Yochai. It's in his merit that we will never forget the Torah. Because in the merit of the Zohar, which is the book of Rabbi Shimon, we will be redeemed from the exile. And that is the main key Rabbi Nachman is telling you why he starts his book in this way, to come to teach us something awesome. Now, it stops here. Rabbi Nachman revealed another line where Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is hinted to in the Torah, because we see Yochai hinted to in the Torah, in the verse. And Rabbi Nachman brings the verse in Daniel, chapter 4, to come teach us who Rabbi Shimon is. As he brings down, it's brought down in Daniel chapter 4. In the prophets of Daniel chapter 4, we see this verse, a holy angel min Shemai Anachi, descended down from heaven. Take the first letters of this verse. You have Ayin of Ir, Vekadish Vav, Min Mem, Shemai Shin, Nachit Nun. You have Rashet Tevot Shimon. Take the first letters and mix them around. You have the word Shimon, the name Shimon, meaning that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is a reference to this holy angel that we're talking about in Daniel. That this is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's source in the Torah. And Rabbi Nachman stops here. But if you look at the book Chaim Rabbi Nachman's biography, in which Rabbi Nachman wrote, you see over there that Rabbi Nachman finished something. He says, and now there's a flowing brook, a wellspring of wisdom. Meaning, take the first letters of that phrase that is brought down. Nachal noveh mekor chokhmah. You have nun, nachal noveh, nun, mekor mem, chokhmah chet. Mix them around, you have Nachman. Meaning that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai also is attached to the tzaddik Rabbi Nachman, that they are both connected in the same manner. They both have the same neshama. It's both the neshama of Moshe. We see some awesome chidush here. Rabbi Nachman is telling you, take the gematria of Shimon ben Yochai, you have the gematria Nachman ben Simcha. The numerical value of Shimon ben Yochai is the same numerical value of Nachman ben Simcha. Coming to teach us that this is the same soul, Moshe Rabbeinu, coming back and back to come and repair the generation with the problems that we have. As we see, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai brought down the Zohar and the Tikkunei Zohar, all these awesome Kiddushim. The Arizal came and brought down all these books of the Kabbalah that even Rabbi Shimon could not reveal that deep because the generation wasn't worthy. And then we see that the Bat-Chen came and brought down all the light of the Kabbalah and the Chassidut, which without the Bat-Chen we would not be able to survive. And the final key is Rabbi Nachman, who's coming to reveal all these secrets of the Zohar as he starts his book in Likutei Moharan and telling us that within this book we have all the secrets of the Zohar brought down to a level of simplicity, so that even the dummy like me can pick it up and understand Avodat Hashem and how to serve Hashem through this. So we're going to do a very beautiful lesson. Torah Kuf Chav Gimel 123 of Likutei Moharan, Kama, of the first book of Likutei Moharan. We're going to do this most awesome lesson that speaks about the idea of attaching yourself to Tzaddik and how we accepted the Torah and why we were worthy of receiving the Torah on Har Sinai. An amazing idea. Ha'ikar ve'ayesod. And we're going to read this Hebrew-English in simplicity because greater than even dictating what is said here, even though it might not be as interesting to read inside the book, the main thing is to read inside the words of the Tzaddik, because clearly whenever we read the Zohar, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai writes that even just reading the Zohar has tremendous effect on the soul, even if you don't understand anything, just to read it. So clearly the same work with all the righteous books, the books of the Gemara, of the Torah, etc. When we read the words in itself, it has the power to illuminate our soul. So in simplicity, let's read. Bezrat Hashem. Ha'ikar ve'ayesod. the main idea and the foundation of everything, that everything is dependent upon this, is to attach oneself to the tzaddik of the generation. So I'm gonna explain a little bit later what the tzaddik of the generation really means. That it doesn't necessarily mean every single generation that there's a tzaddik that one must attach himself to, but we're going to see the key to what this really means at the end of the lesson. So the main thing which everything is dependent on, to attach oneself to the tzaddik of the generation, and to accept the word of the tzaddik on everything that he says, and to say this is how it is. Meaning to accept what he says in simplicity. Whether it's something small or great. And not to deviate, not to stray from what he says, God forbid. Do not deviate from what he says, right or left. And Rabbi Nachman brings this proof from Sifri in Parashat Shoftim. כמו שאמרו אבותינו בזיכרונם לברכה, the Chachamim say on Parashat Shoftim, אפילו אומר לך על ימין, שמאל וכו'. Even if the tzaddik tells you that right is left and left is right, etc. ולהשליך מאיתו כל החוכמות ולסלק דעתו כאילו אין לו שום שכל בלעדיה שיקבל מהצדיק והרב שבדור. So we see that the Sifri in Parashat Shoftim is telling us that even if the tzaddik tells you right is left and left is right, believe it, ta'aminu. And Rabbi Nachman saying further, throw away all your wisdoms, your sophistications, and completely remove your own da'at, your own intellect, as if you have no intellect whatsoever without that which you accept and receive from the tzaddik. Meaning, become so dependent on the tzaddik that you don't want to act unless you find what is written in the books and to follow the advice of the tzaddik. Meaning, we begin to remove more of us to understand more of the tzaddik, and in doing so, we're going to see that actually we're finding who we really are. Because we can think that we are having good advice from ourselves, that we have good advice to give ourselves, that we have good advice to give people. But the second you think that you have good advice is the second you actually lose your influence, the second you lose that truth. And we're going to see that the truth of the generation, the truth of the Torah is passed down to the tzaddik. And as long as you have remaining by you any sort of your own intellect, if you have any of your own intellect still left with you, you're still not in perfection, and you're not attached to the tzaddik. Rabbi Nachman is saying, you're not truly perfect. You haven't truly attained what you needed to do. You haven't understood who you really are, unless you basically throw away what you think you know, and you believe in tzaddik, and you accept the guidance of the tzaddik. And the Jewish people, at the time when we accepted the Torah, we had great wisdoms. Because at that time, those who were serving idols at the time, and remember we were just brought out of Egypt, etc., that it was a time of idol worship. That we know the main reason why people stumbled in Avodah Zarah, in idol worship, and fell into their own beliefs, false beliefs, is because of one thing. It's because of chokhmot l'chakirot. It's because of wisdoms and philosophies, sophistications. Ka'adu, as is known, as is brought down in many Sfarim, it's brought down in the Holy Zohar. Page 125, and in many different places it's brought down in the Zohar that the reason why Avodah Zarah was so prevalent was because we fell into our own wisdoms. And had Bnei Israel not thrown away their own sophistications, their own wisdoms, their own intellects, they would not have been able to accept the Torah. Because they would have been able to deny and to deny everything, to deny God. God forbid. And none of that which Moshe Rabbeinu had done for them would have been effective, would have been beneficial. They would have been able to deny. And we know that even on at the spitting of the sea was a very windy night. Why? To give those people, the opportunity to have free will to decide that it wasn't God who did it. God forbid to say such a thing. But why? Because people who rely on their own wisdom will always fall into their own sophistications and believe what they really want to, without truly in simplicity accepting the wisdom of the Torah. So, Rabbi Nachman is telling us, even all the signs, the miracles, the wonders in which Moshe Rabbeinu did before the eyes of the Jewish people, it would not have been effective for them. They would not have seen it as something special. Because even now today, we see atheists and people who deny God, who deny God and deny religion, because of what? Because of their foolishness and their mistaken wisdoms. Rabbi Nachman is telling us there's no greater harm than falling into your own chokhmah. That it says in the verse, Kol ba'ehel lo yishivun, it says that anyone who goes down into it does not return. And as we know, this is a reference to, Rabbi Nachman teaches us, bring down from the Gemara, that this is a reference to Greek wisdoms and foreign wisdoms, philosophies that a person should avoid as long as he wants to maintain his holiness. But now, Rabbi Nachman is telling us the condition in which Am Yisrael were able to receive the Torah. Because, why? Yisrael, the holy nation, they saw the truth. And they threw away all their wisdoms. And they believed in Hashem and Moshe, his servant, that we say every single day. We say in Az Yashir every single morning, that Vayaminu b'Hashem Moshe Yado. They believed in Hashem and God and Moshe, his servant, meaning, you want to believe in Hashem, you have to have emunah and tzaddik in Moshe. And when they had this emunah in Hashem and Moshe's servant, they were able to accept the Torah. And this is the most amazing chidush Rabbi Nachman teaches us. He brings the verse from Dvarim chapter 32. So look at Unkelus Hager, the righteous convert Unkelus, who translated the entire Torah in the Aramaic language. He brings the verse from Dvarim chapter 32, which says like this: Am naval velo chacham. Am naval, a foolish nation, velo chacham, and were unwise. A foolish and unwise nation. This is the reference to Am Yisrael. It seems like a degradation to us on the surface level. When we're reading the Torah, it seems like the Torah is insulting the Jewish people, that we were foolish, that we have no wisdom. But look what Unkelus says. Because Unkelus is hiding the main key behind what this verse is really trying to teach us. And Rabbi Nachman brings this down to give us an amazing secret. So what does Unkelus translate this in Aramaic as? The nation that received the Torah and did not act wisely. They weren't too wise. So we're going to see that clearly that this translation in Aramaic is not direct, because you could have translated foolish nation in Aramaic, foolish, and Verachakim was accurate. But Am Naval, how does foolish nation translate to the nation that accepted the Torah? So we're going to see here an amazing chidush. Rabbi Nachman is saying, because Unkelus is teaching us that the essential accepting and receiving the Torah came only through the fact that we were not wise. Meaning, the only reason why the Jewish people, were able to accept the Torah is because we did not act wisely. Only because we were able to throw away all our wisdoms. This is what it says in the verse, Am Naval, a foolish nation. Take the word Naval, foolish, Rashet Tevot, Lev Netivot. Take the letters of this word, Naval, foolish. You have Nun, Bet, and Lamed. Mix them around, you have Lamed, Bet, Netivot. An acronym for this phrase. Lamed, Bet, Netivot, which is 32 pathways. You have the Lamed, which is the Lamed and the Bet and the Nun of Netivot, which is, take those three letters, you have Naval. Rabbi Nachman is teaching us that what? That these 32 pathways are the generality of the Torah. That the Torah is encompassed in 32 pathways. And we see, it's brought down in the first line of Yetzirah, I believe, that there are 32 pathways of wisdom. And these 32 pathways of wisdom is referencing the Torah. That the Torah has 32 pathways of wisdom. And how do we know this? That there's 32 times the name Elohim mentioned in the creation of the world. Take the first chapter of Bereshit, you'll see over there in the creation of the world, that there's 32 times the name Elohim mentioned, representing these 32 pathways of wisdom. Meaning that when God created the world, He used it. He created the world using the Torah. And used the Torah as a blueprint to create the world. So He's teaching us that the generality of the Torah is this, or the generality of these 32 pathways, is the Torah. The Hiya Chochma Amitiyut, and the Torah is the truest wisdom. It's the only wisdom. That with regard vis-a-vis the Torah, that all the other wisdoms are completely nullified. They cease to exist. And this is what is referenced in the verse. This is what's teaching us in the word naval. Foolish. That naval isn't necessarily foolish. It's the Torah that we're talking about, because naval is lamed bet netivot. It's an acronym for that phrase. Lamed bet netivot, the 32 pathways, which is a reference to Torah. That the 32 pathways of wisdom is the Torah. And because what do we say in the Midrash Bereshit Rabbah, Parashat Yud Zayin, chapter 17, that the Torah is Novlot HaChochma Adonah, an incomplete version of the upper wisdom. And now we'll see that now. Come and see that now. How beautiful and in place this translation of Unkelus is. Because Rabbi Nachman saying it's a great surprise. And the entire world questions about this translation. Why does Unkelus take the word naval, foolish, and say a foolish nation is a nation that accepted the Torah? Because what does one have to do with the other? But now come and look how sweet these words are of Unkelus. As we just saw, that basically Unkelus is saying that Naval, the foolish nation, is actually the nation that accepted the Torah. Why? Because we were Naval. We were Lamed Bet Netivot. We attained the 32 pathways, the truest wisdom. And the only way we were able to do so is what? Velo Chacham, which Unkelus translates as Velo Chakim, we did not act wisely. Meaning, if you want to attain the ultimate wisdom, the 32 pathways of wisdom, the Holy Torah, the Torah which encompasses all the wisdom in the world, that vis-a-vis the Torah, all the wisdoms are completely nullified. Now, how do you want to attain that? Velo Chakim, don't act wisely. Don't try to be too smart. Be simple. And it doesn't mean being stupid. It's completely different. A person has to pray to understand what this really means. But be'emet, to be tamim. And it says, tamim im Hashem Elokecha, simple you shall be with God. And it says about Yaakov Avinu, Yaakov ish tam yoshev avinu, Yaakov was a simple man sitting in the tent. Meaning he was sitting and studying Torah. But what was he? He was simple. He didn't act wisely. And Rabbi Nachman says the essential avodah, the main service, Liyot tam ve'yashar, the main avodah of today is to be simple and upright. Yereh Elokim v'sar merah, to fear God and to remove yourself from bad. Bli shum chokhmot, without any wisdoms. U'Shlomo HaMelech, Alav Hashem. And Shlomo HaMelech, King Shlomo, upon him be peace. Achar shekatuv bo, even though it says about Shlomo HaMelech in Melachim, book 1, chapter 5, that he was wisest of all men. Ama, what did Shlomo say? Even though we praise Shlomo and say that he was the most wise, what does Shlomo say about himself in Mishlei? I'm more brutish than man. Meaning I'm almost like a var, like an animal. And I don't have the understanding of man. I'm far from this wisdom of a true man. I don't have true understanding, Shlomo says about himself. And Asaf also says in Tehillim, chapter 73, I'm like this animal, this person who's rid of wisdom. I have no understanding. Like an animal I was with you. That even Asaf compares himself to an animal without any wisdom. And it also writes in Mishlei, in Proverbs chapter 21, there's no wisdom, there's no understanding, and there's no counsel before God. Which means that when we act before Hashem, we have to act with complete simplicity, accepting the words of the sages, the way they say it, even though it makes no sense. Even though it seems that on the surface level what the Chachamim are telling us doesn't make much sense. We have to remove our wisdom, and we have to accept the Torah in its simplicity, because the second we use our own intellect is the second we lack attachment to the true tzaddik, lack attachment to Hashem. As Rabbi Nachman says, he brings down Etz Chaim, one of the deepest books of Kabbalah, written by the Ari HaKadosh, and it starts off that there was Or Pashut, that there was simple light. The beginning of Etz Chaim speaks about the simple light. In the beginning, there was simple light. Or Pashut. Rabbi Nachman saying, if in the beginning all there was simple light, meaning God occupied all space, and God is referenced as simple, then who are we to act sophisticated before Hashem? If God is ultimately simple, who are we to act with wisdom? So we have to take this wisdom of the Torah, which in its entirety is simple. And the only way to do that is through acting without any wisdom, without any chokhmot, without any sophistication. Which seems contradictory because you think that in order to accept the Torah, you would need all this wisdom, all this understanding. But Rabbi Nachman is saying the main condition to accept the Torah is forget what you think you know and begin again. We see this idea many different times in history, especially with Rabbi Zera in the Gemara. They brought down this beautiful Gemara that Rabbi Zera, whenever he made Aliyah from Babel to Erez Israel, whenever he traveled from Babel to Erez Israel, to move to Erez Israel, he fasted 40 days to forget the Torah he had once learned. He fasted 40 days to forget the Torah of the exile in Babel that he had learned, because he understood that if a person wants to attain the Torah of Erez Israel, which is this Torah of Geulah, this Torah of redemption, sometimes you have to forget Torah. You have to remove what you think you know in order to accept a higher level. Rabbi Nachman said, a bigger chidush about me is that even greater than the Torah lessons I give is that sometimes I know nothing. Rabbi Nachman, towards the end of his life, on Shabbat Shuvah, on Shabbat, if I'm not mistaken, Shabbat Nachamu, after Tisha B'Av, Rabbi Nachman, it was Friday night, and all the students of Rabbi Nachman came knocking at the door. This was about 2 months before he passed away. And they came knocking at the door, surprising Rabbi Nachman, telling him that they were ready to stay with him for Shabbat. And Rabbi Nachman had no idea. He hadn't prepared. And when they entered the door, and they all sat at the table to do Kiddush, Rabbi Nachman told them, why are you guys here? Endi shum yediyah, I have no wisdom at all. I know nothing. And greater than this idea of knowing is actually not knowing. As we see many different times, anyone who's familiar with the Kabbalah, you look at the Sfirah of Keter. Keter is this idea of Tachlit Yediyah Shalom Neda. The greatest, that Tachlit Yediyah, the purpose of all knowledge, is Delo Neda, not to know. That the main thing is not to think you know anything. And that's Keter, that's the highest crown of Hashem. The highest facet of God is this understanding that you know nothing. Rabbi Nachman teaches us in Torah, Mem Dal Likudei Moran Kinyan, an amazing idea. He teaches us like this, that the truth is, even after all the wisdoms, considering all the wisdoms that exist in the world, even one who knows true wisdom, meaning even one who knows Torah, you said, that the Torah is the truest wisdom, is the truest wisdom. Rabbi Nachman saying, even one who knows true wisdom, even one who knows all the wisdom, even after all the wisdoms that a person has, a person needs to throw away all the wisdom and to serve Hashem in simplicity with complete wholesomeness, without any wisdoms. And the greatest wisdom of all is what we just explained, to throw away your wisdom. Not to be wise at all. Because the truth is, Rabbi Nachman is telling us that there's no such thing as a wise man. There's no wisdom or understanding vis-a-vis God, because God is infinite. So how can we even say that we have even a little bit of understanding when Hashem's understanding is infinite and all-powerful? So Rabbi Nachman says the main idea is what? God wants the heart. As it brought down in Gemara Sanhedrin, and the Zohar Parashat Kitetze, that God, the merciful one, wants the heart. He doesn't care about the mind. We can put in the mind, which is the Torah, we can enter the Torah. But once, even if you have the Torah, even if you have the greatest wisdom, even if you know Kol Torah Kula, even if you know the entire Torah by heart, the main thing is, when it comes to the performance of the mitzvah, for example, when it comes to serving Hashem, serve Hashem in complete simplicity, without acting as if you know anything. And in doing so, you're able to attain the greatest wisdom of all, which is this aspect of not knowing. This aspect of Tachlit al-Yadiyah Shalom Neda, which is revealed to us on Purim. The aspect of what? Tachlit al-Yadiyah, the purpose of all knowledge, Delon Neda is not knowing. Meaning, the more you study, the more you know, the more you realize how little you know. Which means, the more recognition, the more understanding we have of God's greatness, the more we realize how small we are. So, this is what we're talking about here, this amazing inyan. Now, to go back to the beginning of the lesson, aside from the idea of throwing away the wisdom, Rabbi Nachman speaks about attaching yourself to the tzaddik of the generation. And this in itself, Rabbi Nachman seems to say aside from only this lesson, but many of the other lessons, that this is the final piece of what we need to do in the final generation. Attach yourself to the tzaddik of the generation. And some people might question this. They might begin to question why attach yourself to tzaddik. Each and every person can connect himself directly to Hashem. But Rabbi Nachman is saying something simple. A person's service in direction to Hashem, if a person wants to connect directly to Hashem, he can. But once the tzaddik comes into the world, he can't do so anymore. Rabbi Nachman says this in Chaim. He says, until the true tzaddik comes, the person can serve Hashem without the need of the guidance of the tzaddik. But once the tzaddik of the generation comes down into the world, a person needs to accept the advice because he has the truth of the Torah within him, he understands. So, there's a beautiful inyan. If you look at the Torah, whenever we were given the Torah, and we just saw in this lesson, when Hashem gave us the Torah on Har Sinai, Hashem brought down the Torah, and He tried telling us the first two commandments, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, etc. I'm Hashem your God that took you out of Egypt, from the land of, etc., etc. And then also, Lo yeh lecha elokim acharim, that you should not have any other God. God said these two commandments to Bnei Israel directly, but upon hearing this, we all died. We heard the first commandment and we died. Hashem had to revive us and brought us back to life, and then He told us the second commandment, and we died again, until the point where Am Yisrael literally complained to Hashem and told Hashem, we cannot listen to your voice anymore. Bring Moshe Rabbeinu down, tell Moshe the Torah, and may Moshe repeat back the Torah to us. Because Rabbi Nachman is telling us this is the key. If a person wants to accept the Torah, you cannot come directly to Hashem. You cannot think that you have the ability to attach yourself directly to God without believing in Moshe as servant. We know that, unfortunately, it's brought down in Rashi, that when we left Egypt, only 20% of the Jewish people left Egypt. That 80% were left behind. And part of the reason for this, as it's brought down in the writings, the holy writings, writings of Rabbi Natan, etc., that is because they did not believe in Moshe. They did not have the emunah in Moshe that it was time to go. Some of them left early. Some of them didn't believe that Moshe was the Mashiach of the generation. And they fell into their own sophistication. And because of that, 80% of the Jewish people died in Egypt. Only 20% left. And here we are coming back to repair that main mistake that we made at the beginning of time. The aspect that we did not believe in the true tzaddik. And we've done this throughout many times in history, where there were machloket and great tzaddikim, Moshe Rabbeinu, and there are tremendous arguments from all Am Yisrael that Moshe Rabbeinu sacrificed his entire life for us, and that he could not even enter the land of Israel. He wasn't even able to enter with us into the land. He literally sacrificed his life completely for the Jewish people. We've seen many times in history this idea, how many times people for years did not accept the books of David HaMelech. Even Tehillim was not accepted until like 400 years after. That many times we see tzaddikim, they come into the world, and how much machloket they have. The idea of David HaMelech, people thought that he was the son of an improper relationship, that he was born out of an improper relationship. And many other examples. People didn't accept the Arizal whenever he came into Tzfat. We see this throughout history many times. And it's because our sophistications get the better of us and thinking that we know better. And this is Rabbi Nachman coming to tell us that the main ikar, the main tikkun comes from the tzaddik of the generation, who comes to rectify the sins of the generation, that we see, to come to bring down rectifications that weren't known in history. And it's something that we have to really throw away our wisdom and really just believing in the tzaddik. And we see many different lessons of Rabbi Nachman, which Rabbi Nachman speaks about different advice in attaching yourself to the tzaddik, specifically lesson 2, for example, which speaks about the idea of attaching your prayers to the tzaddik of the generation. Meaning that when you pray, that you connect your soul to the soul of the tzaddik, and the tzaddik is able to elevate your prayer to its proper place, as is brought down in lesson 2 of the Delmoor, the idea of Vayaken Moshe Mishkan, that it's Moshe Rabbeinu who builds a Mishkan, that no one else can build a Mishkan except for Moshe, because Moshe knows each and every intricate detail of the Mishkan and where each and every place should go, each and every piece should go. And what's the Mishkan? Mishkan is a reference to the Shekhinah. Mishkan means shochen, which means to dwell. It's the place where the divine presence dwells in this world. And the Mishkan, we know, is a reference to the Bet HaMikdash, in which the third Bet HaMikdash is going to come down directly built from heaven. which means that it's not going to be physical as much as we think it is. It's not going to be built with all this gold and this and that. The Bet HaMikdash is something completely spiritual. It's this thing which comes down from the Shamayim, already built, which means what? It's our prayers that are building the Bet HaMikdash. As Rabbi Nachman saying, it's each and every prayer that builds the Bet HaMikdash, as he says, that the entire weapon of the Mashiach is prayer. And the entire weapon of every single Jew is prayer. But if a Jew really wants to elevate his prayers to the proper place, that each and every prayer is able to bring the Mashiach closer, able to bring down the third Bet HaMikdash, that you can put your prayer, which is supposed to go in this place in the third temple, in this place, is only possible when you attach it to the tzaddik. That's one example. And there's many different things, many different examples. There's a beautiful Torah, lesson 13 of the Moran. Rabbi Nachman brings an amazing Gemara about Rabbi Baruchov, this great sage, that gives us a story, a very vague story, a very deep story that we don't really much know about. But it's something awesome. You look at this. Rabbi Nachman saying something at the end, towards the end of lesson 13, he says something amazing. That At sho'elot Perush At sho'elot oti. So he explains the story of the Gemara. I'm not going to get into the details, but in simplicity you can see what it's saying here. שמע שבעתי מידה בעולם, שעדיין לא תקנתי אותה. תדע חברתי שעדיין אני משוחה בכל התאוות, ועדיין לא יצאתי מן החול אל הקודש אפילו כמנוחות, ובוודאי מישהו במנהגה כזאת, בוודאי לתאווה. היינו שאי אפשר לו לבוא לבחינת איפוק ענן, ואף על פי כן, פוק חזי גבורתא דמרח, אנו כוח החכם, שכל כוח כך כוחו חזק, שאפילו הנפש שלי העלה באיבו. Rabbi Nachman saying that sometimes a person is left within all the evil traits, that he's completely entrenched within impurity. He's sunken into the lowest depths of evil. He can't get out of all this impurity. He can't step one foot into holiness. He maybe done one good thing in his life, but he's completely attached to impurity. And Rabbi Nachman says there's one tzaddik who's very, very high, but he still has a bad trait that is still left within him that he hasn't completely rectified. And Rabbi Nachman saying in this lesson that if a person wants to renew his soul, to elevate his soul, and to bring down Torah novelties, the Torah of the Mashiach, to go through this concept of what we call ibur, pregnancy, this renewal of the soul, a person has to be completely removed from any spiritual defect. And Rabbi Nachman says that even a tzaddik at that level is completely pure except by one thing, that he's still attached to this level of physicality and corporealism and materialism, that he can't do this aspect of his soul. He can't renew his soul in the aspect of ibur, what we call this Kabbalistic idea. But Rabbi Nachman says that even the person who's impure within all the desires of this world, who's stuck within all the evil parts of this world, and yet he's attached to the tzaddik because he wants to come to holiness, and he attaches himself to this tzaddik who's able to do this aspect of ibur, even his soul can be renewed. Whereas the great tzaddik can't be renewed. Because we see what it says here in Gemara, Puk chazi gvurta demarach. Come and see the greatness of your master. Meaning what? The koach of the tzaddik, whose strength is so big that even the soul of a person who's completely impure can be elevated in the aspect of ibur, in renewal, and to be completely renewed, that his soul is cleaned. So, aside from all the lessons that we studied, we see many pieces of advice here. But the main thing that Rabbi Nachman is telling us is the attachment to the tzaddik. We see there are many great tzaddikim in history. We see the books of great tzaddikim, great Hasidic masters, etc., etc. And a person has to search for a tzaddik that Mamash can bring him out of all the impurities into purity, to take him out of all the darkness into light, into redemption. And we'll finish off with this as Rabbi Nachman teaches us. In lesson 30, we're jumping all over the place. But nonetheless, it's still good. That way we get a better idea of what he's trying to tell us. That Rabbi Nachman teaches us that tzarich kol echad in section 2 of lesson 30 of Likutei Moharan. V'tzarich kol echad levakesh me'od melamed hadun kazeh. A person needs to seek out a very proper teacher, like we just explained. What is he explaining? A teacher who can bring down such awesome wisdoms to a person whose mind isn't so big, who can take all this sechel and this great intellect, the high wisdom of the Torah, the secrets of the Torah, and bring it down to an intellect who can't really grasp those secrets, to bring down those awesome ideas and the Avodat Hashem, the secrets of serving God that are hidden within those ideas, and bring them down to a person who isn't so smart, who isn't so worthy. Rabbi Nachman saying a person needs to put all his force and his effort to search out a teacher who's that big, who can bring the greatest secrets to the lowest person. Who's able to explain and to make a person understand such an awesome intellect. Meaning great perceptions of godliness. Because a person needs a very great Rav, a very, very great Rav to do this. Who's able to bring down such awesome intellects into lower intellects for our small minds to wrap our heads around. In order for small people like us to understand. And the smaller a person is, the further a person is from God, this is the great principle Rabbi Nachman saying. That the further a person is from God, the greater the Rav he needs. And we see with the Jewish people that they were on the lowest possible level. They were in the 49th gate of impurity when they were in Egypt. That they needed such an awesome teacher, the Mashiach of the generation, Moshe Rabbeinu, upon him be peace. That the lower we are in, the greater the tzaddik. And we see the chesed of Hashem. That Hashem sent us Moshe, and He sent us secrets that are even greater every single generation. That Rabbi Shimon Rochel was able to reveal things that even Moshe Rabbeinu could not reveal. So with the Arizal, we saw with the Bat-Chen, Rabbi Nachman, great tzaddikim that came later and later, until God willing, the coming of Mashiach, which amen, that we see that Moshe Rabbeinu comes back to bring us out of our exiles, out of our memtet sharei tumah, out of our 49th gate of impurity, and even now, in which Rabbi Nachman says we're in the 50th gate, all the more so do we need a tzaddik that is this big, with piece of advice this big, to bring us out. So, God willing, in the merit of all the righteous tzaddikim, all the great tzaddikim will reveal secrets in Torah. And we have to attach ourselves to and study all the books. But the sicker a person is, Rabbi Nachman says, the greater the doctor we need. And a person has to constantly go on this quest and this search to find the biggest tzaddik possible, to bring him out of the exiles he's in, the darkness that he's in, and show him the light of the Torah, and to, God willing, bring him from tachlit hayarida to tachlit aliyah, from the smallest point in descent to the greatest point of ascent, and to bring us from the smallest point to the greatest point, to bring us all the way up to close to Hashem. So may we have the merit to do so, God willing.
Into the next epicness.